and welcome to my spoiler review for The Huntsman Winter's War. I have been looking forward to this movie for a long time, and unfortunately, it wasn't that good. There are parts of it that I really, really liked, but there are some parts that I just thought, wow, I really wished they changed it up. So I'm going to do some non-spoilers in the beginning, and then I'll do spoilers. I'll warn you guys, and if you want to stick around, please do. And if you don't, come back when you've seen the movie and discuss it with me then. So, non-spoilers. What do we got? CGI, acting, directing, and writing. CGI. In the trailer for this film, all three of them, might I add, people kept saying this is like CGI the movie. I'm going to say, no, it's not. The CGI is beautiful. It really adds to the viewing experience. I really loved the visual effects. I think Freya's ice magic looked fantastic. I thought Ravana's goo magic looked really great. The visuals of the world, because this world is more or less made up, looked awesome as well. So the CGI only added to the experience. So if anyone said to you that the CGI is bad, don't listen to them, because CGI is stunning. It expands this world, because fairy tales have a lot to explore. Charlize Theron said this in an interview, and also that's why Once Upon a Time is so popular. And these visuals add to this exploration, because there's a lot more to these characters and a lot more to this world. So I would say visuals are absolutely stunning. I love the scene when Ravana is revived. So then, acting. This film has an all-star cast for our main characters: Jessica Chastain, Emily Blunt, Charlize Theron, and Chris Hemsworth. There are a bunch of dwarves characters in it, but that's where I felt the movie lost a bit of its impact, because of the focus on the dwarves. But of our four core characters, wow, they did a stunning job. The only thing about them I didn't like was Chris Hemsworth and Jessica Chastain have to have like these Scottish accents, and Chris Hemsworth is Australian, and we know what he sounds like. I'm like, just talk in your Australian accent, because the Scottish one is just it's a little bit much for me. I just didn't really care for that. He's that's when he's acting, because it just wasn't as good as it wasn't that great of a performance overall. But other than his odd Scottish accent, and Jessica's odd Scottish accent too, the way they delivered their lines was amazing. I have a lot more to say about that, particularly in the spoiler review section when we talk about Freya and Ravana. So I really would say their acting is A+, and I felt that the acting is another thing that made me very much enjoy this film, because I felt I was brought in to this world because of how great these guys are. Emily Blunt was a fantastic addition to be the Ice Queen. I loved her as Freya, and I think Jessica Chastain as Eric's wife, Sarah the Warrior, was another really great addition to this film as well, because we learned in the first film that Sarah was killed, but now in this film we figure out exactly how she was able to avoid death. So the last part of this, the non-spoiler section, is to discuss the direction and the writing. Now, the director is, I have my notes right here, it's Cedric Nicholas. And Cedric Nicholas, this is the first film he's directed. I believe, let me just double check, he was nominated for an Academy Award for Snow White and the Huntsman back in 2012 for Best Visual Effects. So he knew where to go with visual effects. That's why they were stunning. He's an Academy Award nominee. But his directing, I would say, needs some work. And I wish that this wasn't his first film to direct, but because I feel there's a lot more that needed to be done with it to make it a bit more enjoyable. So his directing was a bit off, just because the story just goes really interesting, kind of, I guess, it peaks in the beginning, so it's really interesting. Then it slowly declines, and it's kind of flat for like an hour, and then it goes back up for the last half an hour of the film. So that's definitely where I would say it needs improvement. Now, it's also co-written by Evan, I'm so going to butcher his name, Spitaloutopoulos. I'm so sorry. It's so long and very Greek. And then his another partner is Craig Mazin. Now, Evan is the writer of some direct-to-video sequels from Disney. He's also the writer of the Hercules film that came out in 2014, and I was not a fan of that, which is unfortunate because I really do like Greek mythology. So I had really thought I was going to actually. This explains why I wasn't that big of a fan of the film, because his writing. Not that I saw Hercules references, but I wasn't a fan of that. I'm not a big fan of all the direct-to-video sequels from Disney, so you can kind of, I can kind of figure out like why it just wasn't that good. I mean, Hercules got slammed at the box office too, and then Craig Mazin doesn't really have a great track record for movies either. Like, he did Identity Thief, he did The Hangover Part 2 and Part 3, but he didn't do The Hangover 1. He also did Scary Movie 3 and Scary Movie 4. So these guys, they've done movies that have made money for sure, but there was always room for improvement in their work for sure. Granted, all work, can always be improved, but I just feel that these two, they could have really done a couple additions of their script. So directing and writing is where the film kind of goes a little flat. Acting is fantastic, CGI is beautiful, and I enjoyed a good chunk of the stories. The biggest problem that I had, like I said, is the middle, where the action is, it's very boring. But the problem is, in most movies, which are generally divided into 3 acts, the film, the second act, which is generally the weakest and the hardest one to write. Actually, I believe the first one's harder to write, but maybe because the second one is where you're developing your story. But either way, I felt that the second one here they had a lot of issues with, because the first half hour and the last half an hour, fantastic. And then just like that really boring middle. So that's what makes the movie not that good, because you're going into a middle section of the movie that you have to stick through to see the really great end of it. So that's my non-spoiler review part of this movie. So I would definitely say, definitely go check it out, because it is really great. And especially if you're a Charlize fan, a Blunt fan, a Hemsworth fan, a Chastain fan, this is for you guys. And fairy tale fans, but definitely go look at it, because you're going to really enjoy it. So now I'm going to do some spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, turn back right now. All right, are you still here? All right, spoiler time. So more or less, what happens in the past is Ravana curses Freya's lover, the Duke of Blackwood, to kill their child, because like in the trailer, we find out that the child is going to be more beautiful than Ravana, and Ravana doesn't want that to happen. It's actually really interesting, because Ravana does have development in this film, because when she asks the mirror who the fairest of them all is, it says, "You are, but the baby will be later," and she goes, "You can't ask me to do that," and the mirror goes, "I'm not asking you to do anything, you've already decided." So it's like she seems to be torn between hurting her sister and keeping, her power. She's obsessed with power. Power is literally breath for Ravana. It's life. So she curses the Duke to kill the child, which is then what unlocks Freya's chirokinetic abilities. So I thought that was pretty cool, at least that whole backstory right there. Just the way it's acted out, is very, very cool. So then Freya leaves and heads to the north. But because her heart has been hardened, her ice powers have been awakened, she decides to kidnap all these children from their families and harden their hearts to love. Now, Freya is definitely an anti-hero for a good chunk of this film, because she initiates war on so many kingdoms and so many lands to pull all these kids and kill their parents and then bring them up, kidnapping all these children and then raising a child slave army, who she does view as her children, might I add. So that's kind of like the first half hour of the film. And then we skip 7 years later, after the events of Snow White and the Huntsman. And after the events of Snow White and the Huntsman, the Duke, played by Sam Califfin, or actually at this point he's the king because he's married to Snow White, tells Eric that we need you to find the mirror. It was lost on its way to the sanctuary, because that's where its powers can be contained. And then there's a whole journey between Chris Hemsworth's Eric and a bunch of dwarves trying to find the mirror, and Freya seeks the mirror's magic as well. Also, this is something I didn't say, and I don't know why I blanked on it a second ago. In the past, like I said, their hearts are to be hardened to love, and Sarah and Eric are her best huntsmen, Freya says it flat out. And what happens is they start to fall in love, and Freya needs to divide that because love is forbidden. And she says, if you can get to each other, you can be together and you can leave. So all the huntsmen start to block them off, but Sarah and Eric are the best of the best, and they're able to defeat the huntsmen. And then when they're about to get to each other and touch, Freya moves her hand and creates a wall of ice. She does it twice, and it's actually kind of cool. And it divides them. And then what she does when she touches them, it casts a vision for Sarah to see Eric walk away, and for Eric to see Sarah being killed, essentially hardening their hearts to love for betraying her. And I really did love that scene. Emily Blunt looks so cool as the Ice Queen. All of her costume changes were excellent. Same with Jessica Chastain. The outfits in this film are really great to look at too. So the middle section is where this comedy is. We get to see some more dwarves. Freya eventually takes the mirror from Eric, and then we get into the last half an hour battle. I don't really have that many things to say about spoilers for that hour, which is unfortunate because that's where a lot of the movie takes place, but I just felt it was kind of boring. So what happens at the end is Freya goes to the mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest of them all? And Ravana comes out of the mirror. She did a Lord Voldemort. She somehow made the mirror a Horcrux and somehow became the man in the mirror. So anything that Freya asked Ravana must answer it, though she has to touch her in order to get the answer out. So I thought that was really cool. So Ravana says, you asked a question and the mirror answered you. And then what happens is Emily, or I keep calling her Emily Blunt because that's the name, Freya is completely shocked that Ravana is alive. And so what more or less happens is Ravana starts to take over Freya's kingdom. And Freya doesn't like this because this is her kingdom. She built it up over years. She's conquered tons of lands, and Ravana wants revenge against Snow White, and Freya goes, okay, fine, I guess we'll do it. And then there's this whole speech where she goes, men have forgotten what it needs to be afraid. And then while she's doing it, she's losing confidence because she's really concerned about her sister. And more or less what happens is she gains her confidence back, believing it's her kingdom. And then we get Sarah and Eric come in, and Eric is trying to kill Freya because, of all of his scorn with her that he has. And Ravana stops him. And then Ravana and Freya decide that Sarah and Eric need to be killed. And then what happens is Ravana raises this goo and starts to kill other huntsmen because Eric convinces the huntsmen, they're brethren, they're raised together, they are true family. And Freya goes and stops Ravana by creating a wall of ice, and then they start to battle because what happens is Ravana says, I thought I drove the weakness out of you, and Freya asks why, and when she touches her face, she sees a flashback of what happened. And that flashback was intense. I loved it. So the battle was intense. Freya created a wall of ice to protect her huntsman, and everyone is starting to climb over the wall to protect her. So Freya is battling Ravana. The visuals are fantastic. And Ravana goes, I'm stronger than you, and does a blast with her hand. And what that does, Freya tries to block it, but it causes to hit herself on the shoulder. So her ice magic starts to break. And then more or less what happens is everyone's trying to hit the ice queen, the evil queen, and they're failing. And then Freya goes and hugs Ravana, trying to freeze her, causing her to become a mirror again. And Ravana then stabs Freya in the stomach, and that's what causes Freya to die. Freya starts to die, and then she looks at Eric, and then there's a great battle between Ravana and Eric. It's very intensive. And then Freya looks at Eric, she touches the ground, and she freezes the mirror. Eric throws his axe, the mirror shatters, causing Ravana to shatter. Eric and Sarah reunite, they kiss, and Freya goes, you're lucky, because her heart finally melted, and it was a beautiful, beautiful ending. At least with wrapping up the character storylines. Then, the final bit of it is you see the Ice Palace rise up, we get a camera angle of the Ice Palace rising up, and we see a bird that's gold, and that golden bird is most likely Ravana because her soul wasn't completely destroyed. So overall, I would say this film is fantastic. I'm out of time. I only have 15 minutes for this review. So I would say go see the film. The last act and the first act are so, so good. I really, really enjoyed it. Those parts, the middle's a little boring, but overall, it's a fun fairy tale film for everyone to definitely check out. Of the 3 verse films, this is my second favorite, and I'm looking forward to Captain America: Civil War. So thank you so much for checking out my review, and we'll talk really soon. Bye, guys.